G'day, welcome to the podcast. I'm Pete Wargent from Wargent Property Buyers. I'm here with finance guru extraordinaire, Gemma Mitchell. G'day, Gemma. How's things?
Things are going great. How's things with you?
Pretty good. It's very busy in the lead up to Christmas. Kids' play dates, trying to juggle, getting everything finished, people wanting to buy properties before Christmas break, trying to work out what to get the kids for Christmas and everything else. I'm sure that's all familiar territory for you as well.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm moving into a new property in a couple of weeks as well. So trying to do Christmas, get presents, like even get stuff delivered to the house. I'm like, oh, is it going to be here in time because I'm about to move? Yeah, it's really hectic.
So just in case that's not all enough, I'm currently undergoing a renovation, which is topical because that's what we're going to talk about today. And I know that you've been through many more renos than I have, so I'm going to tap your brains on this. Now, a few weeks ago, I sent you a DM and said I'm doing a reno, and you sort of said, I think tongue-in-cheek, take your budget and add 1,000%, which I thought at the time was a joke, but so far you're proving not to be a million miles off. Certainly nothing is coming under budget so far. Mm-hmm. So at the moment, the stuff I've been doing so far has been sort of fencing, painting, fairly sort of menial stuff, and a lot of it I've been able to do myself. But even then, the cost of materials or getting a tradie out for the day has been really expensive. So I guess this is a challenging environment for everyone doing a reno at the moment, and as I'm now discovering. So today we're going to cover off a few key points, I guess. And I think actually when we made our notes, the first thing I put on the notes there, budget and financing, to try and make out some kind of an estimate for how much the reno is going to cost, and then also how you're going to finance it. So I guess you've had clients grappling with the same issues at this time.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, I guess one of the main things that people consider as well is, should they be doing a renovation? Should they just be moving into the house that kind of ticks all the boxes? But I would say that we see a lot more people considering renovating now than moving, because it's so expensive to get in and out of property, like with your stamp duty, even capital gains and stuff, depending on, if you've lived in it. So yeah, we do see a lot of people doing these renovations, but the first point of call is always the budget. And I am a spreadsheet person, so I love a good spreadsheet, especially when it comes to a renovation. But yeah, maybe not adding 1,000% like I told you, but yeah, I kind of think years ago, so my ex-husband and I renovated like for the last 10 years or so. And it used to always be, I'll allow like 10% extra. I just don't think that's even like the costs have just blown out so much. And it's the cost of material, but then it's also the trades and stuff. Like what tradies get paid now compared to when we first started renovating is totally different. Yeah, and there's a labor shortage. Like it's
yeah. So that's pretty much how I've started. So the first thing I did was we pulled together a spreadsheet of all the sort of key line items, and then for each one there's a more sort of detailed budget in the tab. So like yourself, I do like an Excel spreadsheet, being a CA by training, and as the actual numbers come in, I can just drop them in and see where the overruns may or may not be happening. And then I've also got a contingency line, because I guess all renos that could take a year, there's going to be stuff comes up that we hadn't even thought about at the outset. Do you have a sort of rule of thumb, a cost per square meter or anything like that?
No, well, I don't. I know that builders will quote kind of stuff like that, and if you look online, there is, but I don't know how accurate that is if you're doing it yourself and getting all your different trades and stuff in. Because we always did our own renos, and my ex would he was a builder, carpenter and stuff, so he would do them, and we'd just it wasn't a per square meter kind of budget. We would start with, what are all the things we want to do? Like what's going to be the flooring? What's going to be a budget for paint? All this kind of stuff, and just be jumping online, costing everything up, and then just putting a bit of a buffer on it. So I would have a spreadsheet that was like, hey, these are all the things we want to do. This is the budget. This is the actual, and then this is the difference as it would come in. But there's so many knock-on effects to doing a renovation, and time is absolutely one of them. you're just doing cosmetic stuff at the moment, but are you going to have to move out of your
Yes.
property? Because
Yeah,
that's,
so
a big expense.
One of the points we're going to come on to. Now, luckily, we might be able to stay with parents for a while. Not that we'd particularly want to, but it's definitely a consideration. The builders kind of said that we're building an extra story on the property, and we were sort of saying, well, can't we just live downstairs? And they said, to be honest, it would be better with kids if you're just out of the way, because there's going to be dust and dust sheets and tradies coming and going and all of that kind of thing. So, yeah, I guess when we came to do the budget, we didn't have to include a line item for renting somewhere else. But obviously, some people would. And also, I think a lot of stuff seems to be taking longer than normal. And if you're financing the renovation, that's an extra cost you've got to account for. You know, if you're paying, say, 6% on some debt to pay for it, then if it takes 6, 12, 18 months, that's a whole load of extra costs. But back in this sort of way back when, the people used to say, you know, if you're doing a reno, for every dollar you spend, you want to try and add $1.50 or $2 of value. Yeah. It seems in the current environment, that's not really so easy. And almost if you're adding as much value as you spend, you're doing pretty well. But I suppose this is different. We've bought a place to live in, and it's probably a bit different if you're doing a renovation for profit. If you're doing an investment property, you want to increase the rent, increase the sales value, and so on. But
if it's like a lifestyle decision though, you like people will be like, oh, you don't want to overcapitalize. And I'm like, well, it really just depends. If it's a lifestyle, like if this is the dream home, then maybe it's okay to actually do that because it's not an investment. So yeah, I think we can look at them totally different depending on what its purpose is. But yeah, if you were kind of first home or investment property and you were looking to add value to it so that it would have capital growth, you would be wanting to be a lot more cautious on what you're spending and does it make sense and what the return on that.
Yeah, if you're in your early 20s, you bought your first home and it's a bit of a wreck, an old Queenslander or something, but you could probably add some value by it's a bit of sweat equity, doing some painting, cosmetic, reno, cleaning the place up. You want to try and keep the costs down. I mean, I'm obviously sort of slightly more advanced years, more grey hairs. And I said to Heather when we started with the budget, I don't even mind if it ends up being an overcapitalization. I just want to know how much I've spent. So that's why I'm keeping a laser focus on the actuals. And if it ends up that so our budget is in round numbers, maybe 400k Aussie. But if it ends up being 450 or 500, it's not going to kill me. I just want to actually know and not just go in with some kind of open-ended checkbook and then spend loads and never really keeping track of it. So the stage we're at, we've done a lot of the preparation stuff. It's the planning approval process because we're not just doing cosmetic. We're actually extending, building upstairs. So we've got to go through council approval. So I suppose that's a key thing. And we see this a lot as buyer's agents. Quite often people add carports or they convert them into granny flats or there's some kind of lean-to extension. But when you come to buy the property, sometimes people have applied for planning approval but then never got it signed off and there's an open certificate. Seems incredibly common in Queensland, actually.
I think it's very common here. Like you always people have got like the granny flat, but then they can't actually call it that when they go to sell it because they haven't got it signed off.
Or not legal height is another thing in Queensland. You see properties rented out up and downstairs, but the downstairs is, you'd smash your head on the ceiling sort of thing. So I suppose the development application and making sure what you are planning to build is actually going to be compliant and then ultimately signed off. Because look, even just from the simple fact of when you come to sell, if you've got an extension that isn't signed off and certified, that's a problem for future buyers of the property. Yeah. But quite apart from anything else, you just want to make sure you're legally compliant.
Yeah, and that's a cost as well that people kind of overlook when they're looking at should we be doing a renovation and those costs. So the costs of actually getting the certifier, even the plans drawn up, like that's really expensive. If you go to architect or a draftsperson,
like these are
level. These are expensive. And the more you go back for changes changes and stuff. So that needs to be in your budget. So there needs to be all this pre-work, and then there needs to be like then the actual detail right down to how do we actually finish this, and then contingencies. Like if you're doing a reno, you're renovating like an older house, until you actually get started, a lot of the time you don't know what's going to come up, like if it's structural or maybe there is asbestos and stuff that you haven't actually worked out. So all these extra costs can pop up along the way.
Yeah, well, they're already racking up, because even before we put in for planning, we had to have people come and drill down into the earth to make sure.
Do the soil testing.
Yeah, soil testing to make sure that the property can withstand an extra level. And then
sometimes you got to get the boundaries redone. And so you get is a surveyor that comes out, and that I think that cost us at one point like $1,500 just to check that the fence lines were. As
you said, day rates are pretty expensive at the moment, and just to get soil sampling done even before the architect fees, it all can add up. So you need to have a decent budget for that. I think as well. I mean, you guys are obviously very handy, and your ex-hubby would have been very much into the trades, but some of the stuff, just in terms of preparation, I've been thinking, well, how hard can it be? Remove these 2 gate posts, I'll knock those over, and then 48 hours later, like you find this reinforced concrete, which is down, it's just somehow buried into the core of the earth. It's like, right, bring the tradies in, and that's another $1,000. So
yeah, I remember I used to always say to him, like my ex, oh, come on, can we just do this like 5-minute job? And he's like, nothing is a 5-minute job. It's like, it takes me longer to get my tools out than actually do the job. But yeah, and he was always right. Like nothing was actually as quick as it's like, how hard can it be? Hard.
That's famous last words in a reno. So yeah, and I think there's in Australia, depending on where you are in the country, there's some areas that would have heritage overlays. You've obviously got zoning considerations, whether you're low density, low medium density, and so on. I think as well, sometimes you might need to notify your neighbours just out of courtesy. So we were quite fortunate in that our neighbours on one side are about 100 years old. They wouldn't hear a reno if it was happening anyway. And on the other side, they've been doing a reno for the past 18 months. So it's kind of, it's a bit of quid pro quo, I suppose. But
yeah, for some of ours, I can't remember what it was, what we were doing, but we had to get both neighbours to sign the form for council to go with the certifier. Can't remember. Yeah, it was just one of them. Yeah, it must have just been like major stuff. Oh, we were probably doing like a flyover on the deck and stuff, making the deck bigger on the second story. So yeah, the neighbours had to like sign off and approve it. Which was fine because we had good neighbours.
So I think the sort of next bullet point I made a note on was just on scope and design. And I think we already touched on this, just to work out what is the actual goal. Is it to improve the livability of the property? Yeah. Is it to try and add value? Are you trying to make the property more energy efficient, or work out what it is you're trying to do? And if it's so in our case, 2 rapidly growing kids, we just need extra bedrooms and extra space. Different maybe for an investment property where you might be trying to add value and add rent. And that sort of has a knock-on impact then to the design in terms of the space you're trying to create, the layout or the floor plan, the architect's designs and that kind of thing. So I suppose working out what's the goal.
And there's so much that comes into that as well. And my major tip would be know what your budget is, like know what your seal, like the top you're going to be putting into this when you go into design phase. Because
and you're going to say not add 1,000%.
Oh, then add 1,000, yeah.
Or maybe 20.
But like when you're talking to your architect or your draftsperson or whoever's helping you with the plans, like knowing the budget, while they're not going to like price it up, it might totally change the design, because if you want to change the roof line, it's going to be so much more expensive than if you did something else. So if you go into them with, hey, ballpark, we are putting 100 grand into this or 200 or whatever, they're just going to be like, oh, well, nah, don't bother doing that. Like that'll blow out too much. It's kind of like when people go to a financial advisor to get life insurance, like quotes and stuff. It's always good to say to them, hey, this is what we're okay to pay. Otherwise they get the quote for 10 grand and they're like, no. But if you actually go, well, hey, this is the budget, this is what works. It can change the total design of.
So it's a conversation. Yeah, that's it. So I saw a report by the Housing Industry Association last week, and it was just a breakdown of the skill shortages. And the top skill shortages in Australia, as you might expect, sparkies, plumbers, painters, bricklayers, general construction workers, basically every single
everyone
trade.
you need.
Yeah, that's right. And by their estimates, if we want to increase the number of homes that we're building in Australia from 190,000 to 240, 250,000, we're going to need about 30% more skilled trade persons. And it's not so easy in Australia because you can't just bring people in from overseas because they won't. We've got a heavily unionised workforce in Australia, but also regulated. You need to be qualified in Australia. So, yeah, in that context, particularly in Southeast Queensland, if you want to get hold of tradies at the moment, it's really difficult. And if you're going to need people through the process, painters, builders, electricians to do all of that side of things, maybe plumbers, it's going to be quite a process to get all these people booked in at the right price and at the right time, the right part of the schedule.
The timing is so hard.
Yeah, I mean, in an ideal world, usually what you would say to people is get multiple quotes for each piece of work, and then you can find one that fits and works for you. But at the moment, you might not even have that luxury of finding multiple quotes or people available at the right time. So I suppose that in itself is a cost blowout risk.
Yeah, definitely. And it's like, I feel like that in Queensland, we have, I guess it's everywhere, but we have so much commercial work done and new builds as well. Right. And from my experience, like knowing tradies, I think they prefer that than doing renovations, because reno's like all this hard stuff comes up. Like you've got to build, like you've got to work with the existing and stuff. Whereas if you can just like smash out a brand new build that has no problems, I think, yeah, we just see that happening like so much easier. They get paid really well. So getting people to actually come in and do a reno doing smaller jobs as well is really, really tricky.
Yeah, I mean, I know this seems highly unlikely given my soft middle class hands, but back in my youth, I actually used to work for a building company. And we'd put in the roof lines, so fascias, soffits, guttering, that kind of thing. And to your point there, I mean, it's actually pretty tough doing small jobs because almost without exception, the owner of the property wants to carefully look over your shoulder and make sure that every single thing is perfectly done. And if something doesn't fit right in 2 weeks' time, you've got to go back and fix it up. And I guess if you're doing just a modest renovation at the moment, as you said, across Southeast Queensland, we're building whole new housing estates across Caboolture, Ipswich, Moreton Bay. Brisbane Olympics is coming in 2032, so that's sucking a lot of the trades and materials towards New Victoria Park and all the infrastructure projects. So, yeah, the point being, at the moment, it's pretty tough, but that's going to be a key part of the process. The right people, at the right price, at the right time in the process. I suppose going along with that, other suppliers, but also materials costs have blown out. It's maybe calmed down just a little bit. Through the COVID period, we had the home builder package stimulus in Australia. We had over 100,000 detached homes under construction, first time in Australia's history. And maybe it was more acute in New Zealand, but just trying to get your hands on simple stuff, the bricks and the concrete and the other materials that you need in a build. So again, the costs are maybe, it depends on what you're looking to do, but the cost might be 50% higher than they would have been 5 years ago. So I suppose along with the challenges on trade is getting the right materials, and also the other suppliers lined up is going to be pretty tough too.
Renovation's so fun. And I guess there's different degrees as well. Like you could be doing like a full reno where you get like a project manager or a building company and they kind of navigate all this for you. Or you could be, really trying to do a lot of it yourself and save costs. And then you're balancing all of that and trying to get the materials on time. And then all of these delays just blow out how much longer the build takes, and then the costs and your holding costs. And if you do have to rent somewhere else or stay somewhere temporarily, it's like the knock-on effects are huge.
Yeah, I've got a cousin in the family who's a builder, and he's just built a new home, and he was just showing us around a couple of months ago, and he's saying, well, even just simple stuff like these tubes of silicone, they're like $10 each. He said, we've been through hundreds of these things in a new build, and certainly we've found painting the fences and so on that you might put in a budget for a certain number of tins of paint, but then it can quickly escalate. So
how expensive paint too? Like, I know. It's so expensive.
To get a good one. Yeah.
The good stuff. Yeah,
it's stuff that's going to last and it suits your personal design touch. So that's another challenge. I suppose we've got a discussion point here on climate and location considerations. I mean, this is definitely a thing in Australia that we use reports as buyer's agents by companies like Home Snoop, for example, is pretty good. Queensland government is actually very good now providing flood mapping, but it's, I suppose, something to think about: bushfire risk, flood risk, and other climate considerations. I think so in Europe, there's a lot more focus on things like energy efficiency because cost of electricity, cost of power and gas, everything's just shot up over the last 5 years, partly as we transition to renewables. So I suppose, the oldest cliche in real estate is get the right location, because I suppose you can change lots of things about the property, change the layout or the design or whatnot, but the location is 100% fixed in place. So if it's a property you're looking to renovate for yourself for the long term, you want to make sure you thought about things like climate risk and the location you're going to be in.
Yeah. And we have like flood risks, all of that kind of stuff. And some of the older houses that don't meet code. So when you start kind of renovating them or building and stuff, you might have to fix all of the other stuff to bring the whole property up for code. So that can kind of blow out your costs as well.
So something I've heard a bit more about in the last 2 or 3 years is clients saying, we got a quote to do a renovation or build an extension. It's massively overrun on cost. And now I'm trying to get the builders to come to the party and split the cost with me. And then you end up in things like legal disputes. So obviously you need to sort of think about this ahead of time. A lot of construction firms actually went under in Australia over the last couple of years because of big fixed price projects that then suddenly blew out. Even a lot of the big infrastructure projects. I just saw one over the weekend that completed the Sydney fish markets. I saw the final cost was 836 million. And unless my mind's playing tricks, when I used to live in Pyrmont, they were talking about it being 250 million, and that is now well over triple. So obviously there's a risk in this environment that you quoted one thing, you end up with a different price. I suppose you need to understand the contractual terms. What happens if there's an overrun? Who's responsible? And I suppose just in addition to that, if there's workmanship that needs remedial work within the first couple of years, where does the insurance lie there as well?
Yeah, definitely. I do actually hear lots of disputes with like after handover. So after people have signed off with their builder and they now own the house, maybe it was a new build or a renovation that they had a builder doing, and they'll do the last progress payment, and do handover, and then all of these defects and things happen and there are disputes on, well, who's actually dealing with those. So that can be really, really stressful. I built in last year, I had a house built in Adelaide in South Australia. So I'm in Queensland, like nowhere near it. And so just trusting like the building company and them sending me photos was like pretty stressful. And I actually ended up getting, so I got an independent, because they actually have like the certifier goes around and, but I got an independent build so that, and I got him through like 3 times, building like inspector, independent, and then I hired the real estate guy who was going to be the rental manager. I picked him early and he would go and do walk rounds and stuff for me as well. I was like, I had to have like all these different people because it's so hard to build interstate. And it's not like I can fly up down once a month and check on it. So I've literally never seen this house, never driven past it, just had photos and people tell me what needs to be done. Yeah,
so if you buy an off-the-plan apartment or a new build, it's quite common before the settlement to go around and do a bit of snagging and, look at the light switches aren't straight or whatever it may be, and maybe get somebody to look at the structural work as well. So, that's definitely another challenge. I think in terms of market trends and things like that, so when you're doing a reno, I suppose this again differs between whether you're renovating something to live in versus something as for profit or a renovation for an investment property. But I suppose in increasingly common in certainly in this part of the country is people like sort of big open plan living, open spaces, high ceilings, light colours. So I suppose a lot of that stuff is fairly self-explanatory. I think when people are renovating to live in a property, quite often their taste might be a bit more niche. What do you think about researching market trends in terms of what adds the most value? Kitchens, bathrooms, that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and you'll always hear people say different stuff. But I think I've told you once before. So we were ready to sell one of our properties, and we had one bathroom to go. So we quickly did that. Anyway, we'd done the ensuite, we'd done everything. And we had moved across the road, and we were now living and renovating in the other house across the road. And so we sold out this house that we'd painstakingly renovated, the first one, it settled. And the week that these people moved in, they ripped out the brand new ensuite. So they're just like the vanity that I picked so much, spent so much time picking, and they took changed the tiles. And I was like, it's a brand new ensuite. So when I talk to people about whether they should, renovate in order to sell, I'm like, talk to the real estate agents first about if they think that's going to add any value, or if they think the buyer will want to put their own stamp on it. Like what kind of houses, who buys in this area, really know your market. Because sometimes we put money into things that we think will add value, but it won't necessarily. And then you have to watch people rip out your hard work.
Actually, for people in Melbourne, I should give a shout out to my friend Peter Karaglanis, because that's exactly what he does for his business, presenting homes Australia. If you're looking to sell and you want to maximize the sales value, there's certain things that make a big difference for not too much cost. And there's other things that might need a bit of expenditure. But certainly in an auction environment, people can be very committed, because people make an emotional decision on whether to buy a place very quickly, first 30 seconds, I guess. And that there are sort of experts in local market, but also what makes a difference to the sales price. That people put a lot of focus on things that matter to them, but maybe not to the wider market. Yeah.
And if you are going to renovate to make it more attractive to the wider market, you want to know what the trends are, but also I would say do it quite plain, so people can put their own stamp on it, but it will appeal to the masses. But it just really depends on what area this property's in. If you're in an investment place, then it needs to be neat and tidy with the next buyer having nothing to do. But if it is somewhere a beachside town where people come to retire and buy their forever homes, then maybe it's not necessary because they're going to want to do the renovation.
I've heard in slow markets of builders agreeing to put in a high-spec kitchen for the prospective buyer to get them across the line, and then the buyer pulls out and they've put all this money into a kitchen. And I suppose that's what you don't want to do, is over capitalize on something, as you said, and someone's going to change the vanity immediately after settlement or something like that. So I suppose just in terms of thinking ahead and future proofing, I suppose trends come and go in terms of design and renovations, also sustainability rules. A lot of new apartment developments are looking for sort of 7-star environmental friendly finishes and so on. But did you have to try and think ahead as well in terms of what might be important in the future?
Yeah. Are you doing that with your renovation?
Well, not really. I mean, I suppose we're putting in solar. That's one thing. So the roof is about, on this place that we're doing, it's maybe 35 years old. And the builder said, look, to be honest, it would need replacing sometime in the next decade anyway. So you may as well just replace the tiling and the roof. And if you're going to do solar, now's the time, because you can do it all in one thing. So yeah, solar. Haven't really thought about EV charging points, but there's things like that which obviously can see the direction of travel is in that way. So I suppose,
and I guess that's a more immediate thing as well, because already people have that. It's not like we're trying to predict 10 years in the future, for flying cars or whatever. It's no, a lot of people have EVs now. There's a lot of incentives. So yeah, that's probably one that you want to be thinking of. I think most people are about solar. They're thinking that that's something that they want, and that's quite accessible these days. That's probably the only thing that I would, I've had on each of my houses, and the one that I've just bought that I'll be moving into that has solar. And I was like, oh, excellent. I don't have to do it. So if it wasn't there, I would have absolutely put it on.
Cool. So I'm just thinking of some summary points. Obviously, get the right professionals lined up at the right points in the process. Check and see if there's any government stimulus or packages available. Variously, they do come and go for renovations. Obviously, contingency for overruns. This is more of a sort of a personal question. I've had over the years, a lot of sort of friends have gone through renovation projects, and I would say maybe 9 times out of 10, there seems to be a point in the journey where they just hating life and they wish they'd never started, and why did we, this was your idea and that kind of thing, or neighbor disputes. And obviously there's probably going to be an nadir in most projects where you're thinking you wish you'd never started, or it's all gonna go wrong and this is never gonna finish. Do you have any sort of words of wisdom for people who are, because
it definitely happens.
Life rarely goes in a straight line, and there's usually ups and downs along the way.
Yeah, my biggest tip would be like with the budget, right? So with the budget, we know that it's probably going to blow out and we have to have a bit of contingency there. I would say do that with your mind, like your mind, your mindset, like your frame of mind is so critical to how we react to things. So if you're going into it like this is a 6-month reno and then it blows out to 9 months, you're going to be, or even 12 months, you're going to be so frustrated. Whereas if you're like, if this goes for 12 months, 18 months, and then it goes shorter, like I'd always just plan for things to go longer so that you just have a little bit more grace. Because it's real, that time frame is really tricky. And like we used to reno and live in the renos, and I think I'm at the point in my life where I don't want to live in a reno anymore. Like I would
rather go to Bali.
I'd prefer to move out. And like obviously that's a privilege, like very privileged position. So it might be that in the future I price up a reno and we have to live like through it. We'll see. But I would say just get really clear on the time frame and then extend that and be like, can we actually make this work? And if it runs over, what do we do? Will we then go and move out if we're not coping? Like it's always good to talk about the what ifs. It's like if you go into business with someone or you go in to buy a house with a friend or investment, whatever, you want to be like, all right, well, if this doesn't work out, how do we get out of it? And so reno, you can't stop halfway through. So you just say, what, if it's not working, what do we do? Do we get an expert in? Do we move out for a while? Like what is our backup plan?
Yeah, I suppose this is sort of a stage of life thing, isn't it? I've known younger people who've bought one of those houses from Queensland House Removals. We're just going to live in the sleep out with the termites, and there's some hard yakka maybe, but I think when you've got kids, maybe it's hard. You've got school runs and things to try and organise and so on. So I suppose in the spirit of stoicism, they always say if you're going to sort of keep going, like being as well organized as you can be. Yeah. But I think the other thing I've found useful over the years when things are just going badly, just whether it's in business, life, renos, whatever, is like if you can just make some progress in a day, and at least you feel like you're still moving forward, even if it's something as simple as updating your budget or speaking to a trader, because it's unlikely to go perfectly smoothly, I suppose.
Oh, definitely. I remember one of our renos, we had like a camp kitchen set up in the garage, and we were all downstairs in one bedroom. So it was like me, my husband, and our son was on like a mattress, like single mattress like next to us, and then my daughter was maybe 6 months old and she was in a cot in the walk-in robe, and we were all just in one room, the kitchen, everything was there, and I think we were like that for 9 months, and I honestly think it was like a really fun time.
That's a good reframing, actually. It's all part of the journey, I suppose.
Yeah, and like the kids were so little and stuff, and it was fun. But the key, you were so right, organisation, like even just having like a tidy site and having, like I remember we just went to like on Marketplace or Gumtree, whatever the flavour was then, and we'd get like free cupboards and all this stuff. So everything was just really organised all the time. That definitely helps. Major tip, get a spreadsheet or even a piece of paper, whatever, but just track stuff really, really well. The other thing that we didn't touch on is you have to be really careful with your insurance, because a lot of like you might be living in the property, and then when you start to do a renovation, depending on the scale of it, it might actually change your policy if you're eligible, like still actually covered your home and contents insurance. So you just want to check with your insurance and let them know that you're doing a renovation and make sure you have the appropriate cover.
I suppose if you're taking the roof off, then obviously there's some risks to your contents. So that's a good point as well. So that's brilliant. Okay, we'll have to have a debrief. We're recording this, I suppose, late in the year 2025. So a year's time, we'll have to have a debrief and I can see where I went wrong.
Yes.
And how bad the cost overruns have been.
Tell us now, how are you feeling about the reno now? Like,
it feels at the moment like it's going to overrun cost-wise, but also time. Everything seems to be taking longer than it should. Yeah. So it feels like it won't be done in 12 months, but we'll see.
But you're like still on the excited, pumped for it stage.
Still early stages. Yeah. So maybe I'll do a mid-year debrief when I'm depressed and you can give me a pep talk. Yeah. Brilliant. Thanks, Gemma.
Look forward to it.
Look forward to chatting next time around.
Thanks for watching this episode of the podcast. If you want to hear more from us, you can get daily videos and podcasts on Rask's YouTube channel. Or if you want to enroll in a free course on investing, property, business, money, you name it, you can join over 34,000 other students and enroll in a free course on the Rask website. Simply head to www.rask.com.au and follow the prompts. Thanks for watching this Rask podcast.